Hey, everybody. How are you guys doing? I'm here with special guest Moisen. How you doing, Moisen?
Hey, not bad, you?
I'm good. And big welcome to everybody who's joining us. This is Open the Door Part 2. We had, didn't we, Josh, such an amazing time last week. And the response was insane, wasn't it?
Definitely. It was.
We've got so many of your questions to get through. We're going to do the first hour of some music production and we're going to cover some fun stuff. And then we'll get to your questions the last part of the stream. And I'll be moderating today because we're going to do something a little different. So about 10 minutes ago, I did something sneaky. I sent Moisen the stems from our last session and he'll show you where we took off because I thought it'd be interesting if he was going to swap and then show you a bit of like what's happening with drums. And we're going to cover fun things, aren't we, Moisen?
Yeah, we're going to do some drums, expand on the ideas that you put forth last week, and do some parallel compression, some EQ, some sidechaining.
Sidechaining, all the fun stuff. And we've got lots of questions like that. So without any further ado, we're going to switch over to Moisen, and then next week we'll switch back to me. So I think it'll be fun because it gives you guys a chance to see what it's like to collaborate with somebody remotely, which is really important in this day and age, wouldn't you say, Moisen? It's like...
Yeah, it's hard. Like this network sort of collaborating with different artists and stuff is really important to get your name sort of there and show your skills and actually just interact with people.
Yeah, and also it's something new to see how somebody else interprets your work. So without any further ado, we will get cracking. Over to you, Moisen.
Thank you. So
I'll add your door to the screen real quick.
Nice one. Okay, so this is the project that DJ Rap did last week. Just the basic bare bones of a tune. I'll just give it a quick play so we can refresh our ears.
I did more than the drums.
You did, that's my fault.
That's brilliant. All I did for 2 hours was work on some drums, everybody. No, but I'm sure there's a bit more. It was just a basic, so just the writing and just getting some ideas. And last week's lesson was more about just how to get you out of that stuck phase if you are stuck and not sort of, understanding how to move forward. Some neat tricks and pro tips there. You ready to go?
Yeah, wicked. So, it was kind of handy that the drums were soloed anyway, because that's what I feel like is the best place to start for me. This is where I would start. I know that you mentioned last week, didn't you, that you'd like to do the intro?
I start with the melody, but everybody's different. There's no right way. So just refresh them a little bit of where we left it. And then, show us what you're going to do.
Yeah, make sure it's unsoloed. That's important.
I think you've still got bits soloed. There's no Reese bass line there.
No, it must have bits.
I think I panicked him when I sent. I think I panicked him when I sent him the stems like 5 minutes before. I was like, "You do it. Let's see what you do to the track." It's all right. I'm just going to go through some of the chat as well. Go ahead.
Cool. Just going to do a few little setup bits here with the pre-master. I'm going to chuck a limiter on. I like to do this because obviously producing into a limiter already cranked is sort of a really good way to produce as you go to find out that what the sound is going to be towards the end. So I usually put it at about minus sort of 6 or something like that, and then sort of adjust the levels from there before I even begin. Just going to mute the bass, solo the drums and concentrate there.
I guess we're not going to hear what I did last week, but for some reason we're not going to hear it, but he's going to work on the drums. It cracks me up.
we will get there.
All right.
Okay, first thing I like to do is probably, there's a nice convenient breaks group here already, so straight away let's get a vibe going with some breaks. I like to use a sample pack from Myth, big up Myth. It does some great breaks and they're really high quality, so there we go. Let's have a listen. Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to loop this little section here.
So basically, why Josh is doing this, for those of you who want to know, is when you've got drums, if you just had a kick and snare, it would be pretty empty, right? So often we use breaks and we slice them up and cut them up and pitch them up or down. And this way you can add some really interesting fills, variation, and you're basically going to roll off all the bottom end, which he'll show you, I'm sure. And it just gives that break, that full sound. But ultimately, you want it all to sound married together like one break. You don't want it to sound like here's a break, here's a kick, here's an it. All has to sound cohesive and part of it together and glued together.
Exactly, exactly. So here I'm trying to find a break that's not really got too much information in it so that we can still sculpt our own sounds around it as well.
So you're not looking for a break that overtakes the whole sound. You're looking for a break that complements what you've got going.
Exactly, exactly. And just on that break, first thing I always do is take a look at where it's sitting in the frequency spectrum. So straight away with the Pro Q. This is exactly the same as a EQ8. It's got a little bit more bells and whistles and things to do in it, but it's pretty much the same theory behind it.
I will jump in and say something here, because when I'm teaching privately, I start with an EQ8 because they're both parametric filters, but it's a very simple filter, and the interface is much simpler to look at. This can be a bit overwhelming for beginners. I understand that. There's lots of colors, especially when you're hitting the mid inside and all that stuff, but it's a fantastic EQ. But a good practice you can do just to start is just to make sure that you roll off all the bottom end, even if you use a simple EQ8 or something like that. Just get into the habit of rolling all the bottom end off, all your sounds, and obviously not sub bass, but all your basses, but we're talking about, well, not your sub bass, but basically, as you can see, he's rolling off all his all the bottom frequencies of it here.
Yeah, exactly. And what I've noticed as well is if you start having some sort of a sharp cue on there, it starts to mess with the signal. So in the early stages of this, while we're not doing anything particularly surgical, it's nice to have like a sort of a gentle roll so it stops any sort of distortion or phasing issues behind the scenes. Okay, great. I'm going to just cut this a little bit just so that we've got a gentle rhythm. Wicked, like that, feeling that. So I'm going to just address the kick and sort of address things as I go. And what I find is doing that, you sort of like put another element in, you put the element where you want it to be, and then your ears will sort of detect another problem that's happening with it. So that's what I detected with the kick, and we'll move on to something that's quite interesting with this. So on the kick, if I actually grab a FabFilter Pro Q, this is a little tip, and you have a look at where the kick's sitting. I'll solo it so you can hear. Okay, it sounds like it's distorting a little bit. So if you remember on the pre-master, I put a limiter on it so that we're sort of producing into the limiter, so that when you've finished, all you've got to do is turn it off. And then you're pretty much ready to send it to a mastering engineer. So we're just going to adjust the volume until it's sort of not clipping and it's not giving it that horrible distorted sound, unless you wanted that.
Couple of things real quick, because we had a couple of people ask us a few things. Sorry, Josh, to interrupt you.
No problem.
One is you can enlarge the screen, and make sure you know that, so you can see this a lot bigger. Please don't watch this on a phone and use the enlarge button on there, which will work. And two, one of the things that Josh just said, it's very important that whilst you're using limiters, you make sure to turn them off when you're exporting stems ready to send to somebody to master, or when you're ready to master.
Exactly, yeah, perfect. I've done it a couple of times where I've sent it to the mastering engineer. I believe we both use the same one. And what happens is I just get an email back saying, this is squashed.
Yeah, we both use Dap's Compound Audio. He's amazing. And yeah, I've got his emails on my sign up form on the website. And there's been a couple of times where he's gone, oi, dozy.
Yeah, yeah, literally.
You sent me all the stems with the limiter on your Twitter.
Yeah.
It happens.
So with this kick, what we've got is, if you remember, we've got these groups as well, right? So let me just break this down a little bit so that we're clear as we go. So in the groups, let's say the kick snare is in its own group, so the kick and snare, that will also have a limiter on, so that we're sort of controlling that signal all the way through the chain. So I'm going to grab one now. This is the same as Pro L2, really. I just like it because I'm used to it. That's all.
Hold on a second. We have a question. What are stems? So stems are when you make a track across each line of the track. See all the lines that he's got there on each channel. There is a different sound. So you've got a kick on one channel, a snare on another channel, and then you've got hats, etc., all placed on separate channels. And you can have multiple channels. And those are then exported, and they're called stems instead of channels. So just think about it that you're exporting the whole track, but each part separately.
Yeah. Thank you. So on the kick snare group,
I got to address this. I'm sorry. So weird composing into a limiter at 6. Yes, it seems counterintuitive, but actually most people do this now, because we explained last week what happens when you have a limiter, because you want to have everything at 6 so it's quiet, so nothing's distorting. Then you'll put the limiters on to protect every sound. But also, if you want to hear what it's going to sound like with that crunch and that mastering, and you want to turn it up and drive it into the limiter to get an idea of certain frequencies that might not work in the master, it's a really handy tool. Sorry to interrupt you, Josh.
No problem. It's a good point to drive home, because I know that a lot of people have said to me, "What do you mean you produce it into the limiter? Well, that's against everything that people have taught." But if you think about it intuitively, it is literally a case of you're producing to a final sound, and you'll get no nasty surprises at the end, just like Rap said.
Yeah, and also there is no right and wrong way. You do what works for you. I've had producers say to me, "Why are you doing that?" And then I've had other producers every single producer I've worked with in my entire career, I have never met two that work the same. Trust me, we're not here to tell you this is the right way. We're just here to show you a sneak peek into Josh's, creative process and how I make tracks. It's that simple, and hopefully share some knowledge along the way.
Awesome. So back to it. So the limiter now is on the kick and snare. So the audio signals coming through those channels into that limiter, and I'm just going to monitor this. I'll leave it on the screen for a moment, and we can see how that kick's reacting into this limiter, which is on the kick snare group. In fact, I will colour this green so you know where the audio signal's going to, and which one we're working on as well. Bear with me. Okay. So you see there that we've got plenty of volume, we've got plenty of room, we've got plenty of time. I'm just going to switch the mode. And so now I know that I can actually boost the volume of this kick. It's not going to distort until it sort of hits that 0 dB threshold. Okay, it is distorting now, but just pull it back a bit. Okay. So I'm going to keep this up here, and I'm going to go into the kick. This is a nice little tip to change the character of the kick. So you bring up a Pro Q, and find that fundamental where it's hitting the most. And really, it's going to sound crazy, but boost it up. And then just bring those sort of mids down to compensate. And then bring the volume down to compensate. And then just shorten the actual clip. There we go. It's sort of like, it gives it a bit more meat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert an audio track, and I'm going to bounce that in place. The way I do it, I'm sure there's a better way of doing it, is click the arm button, and then we want the audio input source to be from what we just made, which is called swing kick.
Yeah, there's various ways of doing this. You can hit resample, start a new channel, and you can do it that way, or you can just select the actual kick. There's loads of ways. Actually, I got Moisen off the DAW he was using, so he's doing incredibly well, considering he's only been using Ableton for what?
3 months, maybe?
Is it that long already? Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Well, then you've got an excuse.
Yeah. I'll never go back. Once you've gone Ableton, you'll never go back. It's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so and then we can literally just hit the record button and bounce that kick in place. Okay, I'm just going to mute this one, solo the kick that we've got now. And now we can start doing some processing to that one. So what I'll do is I'll colour the old kick. No, I won't. I'll delete it apparently. I'll colour the old kick red so that you can see clearly which one we're working on. So I'm going to just shorten this down to a kick's length and I'm going to start doing some processing. Okay. First things first, chuck on a Pro Q3. Just start boosting those frequencies that we need. Quite broad strokes right now. Brilliant. Another little monitoring tool that I like to use so I can see that we're in the right field is it's an oscilloscope.
I love this. I can't even pronounce it. It sounds like a dinosaur. Incidentally, my one doesn't work. I've got to reinstall that. For people talking about doors here, we can end up getting into door wars, and I don't want to do that. Like, just use what works for you. Okay, we're not here to sell anything. This is just what we prefer to use. It's what I teach and it's what I use. So you know, I've used Logic, I've used Cubase, I've used all of them. For me, this works because of the session view and the fact that you can play live with it, and it was the first DAW to do that, and it's an incredibly powerful tool when you're playing in a band and you want to play live with the session view. So that's why I think Ableton is amazing, but also it's super easy and the interface is easy to learn. And when I take students on within the first lesson, they're remixing, like they know how to do that in the session view. So it's pretty powerful, but just use what you like, you know, and know it inside out.
Yeah, I agree completely. Okay, so the way, if any of you guys are familiar with Rekordbox, this has quite a similar waveform, sort of as what that would have. So if you look at just like Rap said in the last episode, if you have a look at the actual tune in Rekordbox, you can get a gauge of what colours it are and all that kind of stuff to, you know, match your tune to it. Just going to get this up to level. So all this time I'm just keeping an eye on this here to get it to where we need it to be. If you find it's distorting a little bit, then quite simply on that kick, usually it's the low end that sort of distorts first, so we're just going to sort of bring that down. And then bring it back up with the limiter.
What's great about that EQ, the Q3, is that there's a little keyboard at the bottom, there's a little icon, and you can find the actual note. It'll give you the note of the kick, where the frequency is landing on what note, and you can slide that frequency to fit the note that you want, which I'll show you at some point if we ever get a chance. I'm not sure what we're doing today, but we'll see. But it's an amazing EQ for that.
Okay, we're pretty much at the stage where I'm quite happy with that kick. All this is subject to change, but that's quite a full kick, and this kind of answers a few of the questions from last week. Is if you monitor all of your sounds like this, you're getting like a nice volume over time with the kick sort of still sounding fat and clean. That's the most important thing. Okay, close all these off. Now we can match this kick up. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to insert another audio track, and I'm just going to bounce this so that we've got the copy and we don't have to. We can actually see the waveform in the DAW. So remember, we put the audio source in to, now it will be 6 audio, and then we hit the record.
It is complicated. People are saying it looks complicated, but we're getting deeper and deeper. Like, you start off by writing the tune, then you start shaving all the sounds down and EQing it. And EQing is really important because if you can imagine being in a club right? And there's certain frequencies that we can't hear, but they're there nonetheless. So if you don't shave the bass off every single stem and every sound that's every single sound that's on these stems, you're just going to end up with a lot of a muddy mix. So a lot of the time, what this is just constantly sculpting, raising certain points and frequencies that fit, getting rid of, pulling down peaks of frequencies that fit. Another thing with the parametric, if you hold onto it, it will show you the peaks, and you can actually pull down or pull up the frequencies you want to expand or get rid of. So, you know, that's what it's really about, constantly finding the right space for each of your sounds. It's not how many sounds you put in there, it's the right sound sitting in the right frequency that matters.
Exactly. And these speakers in the clubs are very highly responsive, and obviously at loud volumes you can hear almost every intricate detail. Okay, I'm just going to line up the kicks with the break. And then we're good to go. We can have a listen, and we can do some layering of the break to give it a bit of substance. Okay. Okay, one thing just to note as well, on the break bus as well, and you can guess it, another limiter is actually going to go on there. And we're just going to monitor it to make sure that it's not clipping in any way. Okay, so I am going to leave it there. I did say not clipping in any way, but at these early stages in this, in these channels on these groups, if the limiter's doing a little bit of work here, it just means there's less work for your limiter to do later on in the pre-master and the master stage.
And yep, compressors are great as well. Sorry, who's it was saying this? Jamie. Yes, multi-band compressors are great for cleaning up as well, but we're not there yet, so bear with us.
Yep, thank you. Okay, what I feel like I'm going to do with this break is I'm going to just do a little bit of a technique to give it a bit of layering, give it a bit of substance. So I'm going to insert an audio track underneath it in preparation, and we're just going to focus on this break for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to really heavily distort it. So I'm going to use Wave Shaper. One of my favorites.
Love Wave Shaper. We talked about this last week. We got into Wave Shaper last week. It's amazing. Just want to say hi to everyone who's joined, all the ladies in the house, all the guys in the house. Thanks so much for watching from wherever you are. Thanks so much for keeping your comments respectful. We do appreciate it. But yeah, Wave Shaper is an amazing tool, and there's so much you can do. I mean, as you see, as we get deeper into this, whether it's parallel compression or all the different things that have to be done to make this work, you know, side chaining your parallel compression as well, and all these things that just sound like probably Martian talk to some of you, but others of you who are more advanced will know what this is. But there is a lot of work that goes into making this sound like a fluid break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm going to push this distortion. Might be a bit loud, so I'm just going to turn it down a little bit, and we're just going to push it till it's really almost unusable, right? Turn that down just a little bit more. Okay, it's really washy at the minute, so I'm going to just thin it out a little bit using Saturn and changing the dynamics. Lovely. And now we can go to this audio track. In fact, let me just colour these so that you can see where I'm at. And if I'm moving too quickly, I do apologise. Okay.
It's a good question by Scopes. He's saying, I've fallen into the habit of getting most of the writing process done before any real EQing. That's a really great habit. I don't do any of the EQing or any of this stuff until I'm happy that I've got a good idea, because otherwise you're just polishing a turd, right? So you may as well make sure you've got a good foundation, a good idea that you can listen to that's looping for maybe 8 bars constantly, and you're not getting bored by that, then you know you're onto something. But if after 10 minutes you're like, oh, I'm just sick of this bass line, what's your you're brushing your teeth or whatever, then it's not worth even spending the time on the kicks, the snares or whatever, which is why last week I started by showing you have a kick and snare that's ready to go, that's polished, that sounds good. That could be your writing kick, your foundation snare, and then you can start building on that and just get the vibes out. Once you've got the vibe, because as I said last week, I didn't sell 3 million records by sound design, I sold them by vibey records. So have that vibe down, dial that in first, and then you can spend the time polishing. However, there are other producers that for them that's an essential part of their workflow to start EQing and doing all this fine stuff straight away, and that's fine too. It's how it works for you, what serves you, that matters.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so back to this break. With this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to record it into this free audio track that we made earlier. So I need to put the input source to number 9 break, which is here, and I'm just going to record it. Perfect. Right. So now this is a great little tip that what you can do to bring a little bit more character to all of your breaks. You can actually now we'll just actually remember to go back to it and delete the things that or just mute them. And tell you what, I'll group them. So shift click, right click and group so that we can turn them off dead easily. So now what we've got is the break that we had before, which I can turn up now. And then now we've got this break layer as well, which granted is going to need a little bit of EQing.
So for those of you who missed last week, a couple of you saying you're gutted you missed last week, you can still watch them. They are up there on my YouTube page in Open the Door playlist. They're on my Facebook. But for those of you who signed up to Open the Door, which is if you go to my website, djrap.com, I'll put the link in here again, and you sign up, we send a trimmed down version of this whole stream, cutting out all the waffle and talking and just the bones of it, so you get that. So it's worth signing up just for that alone. Of course, please no uploading or sharing it, but it is live on all my pages already and on Moisin's.
Okay, so yeah, I've just shaved off the bottom end of this because if you notice, although it sounds like it's really high pitched, there's actually quite a lot of information down here, which we're not going to want for this layering. And also another thing to note, yes, it's really high pitched and yes, it's a layer, but those real highs I am just going to roll off because they're the space that we have for the hi-hats and they're the space that we have for the main groove of the track. The hi-hats actually contribute a lot to a groove. Okay, fab. I'm going to turn this down and I'm going to mix it in now with that break that we had before. In fact, I'm going to mix it in with the break and the kick and the snare that we've already got. So let's have a quick listen. Just going to turn off our hats and rides for a minute. I'll get to them soon. Okay, lovely. Let's make another layer. Now this is quite important as well to give your track that fullness and thickness. We're going to make a sort of stereo layer. So that's great. It might have a bit of stereo information, but really we want to make a relatively wide layer. And now that we know that we've made this layer here, and it's we'll just check the mono compatibility actually. I use a tool called MSED. It's free. It's from Voxengo. Some of you may be familiar with what's it called? Voxengo Span.
Yes.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is mute the mids and just listen to the sides of this crispy break that we made, which is just below the plug-in here. Excuse me. See, it's not really got that much side information and it's not really that pleasing. So this is mainly a mid layer. So just solo this break that we were on before and we'll start making some sort of side information for it. So I'm going to turn the distortion back on and turn the volume of the break down so it doesn't hurt our ears.
I think, Josh, it'd be really good for people to understand what sides is, what stereo is, and all that stuff. So, you know, like, they might not know what that is for some people in the chat. So, you know, the mid, which is coming straight at you, and the way sound comes at you, and then you've got the sides, and just explaining in your own way what that is.
Sure. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I'm still sort of semi-wrapping my head around it. But what it is really is when you've got a mono signal, what that is that both speakers that you're listening to are in exactly the same phase and they sound exactly the same. As soon as you get a signal, one panned left and one panned right, and if they were exactly the same, that would also be mono. They would just sound like they're directly in the middle. I could give you an example. So if I mute the sides of this high pitch layer that we had before, solo it, this is what a mono signal sounds like.
You can see it's right in the middle coming at you.
Exactly, right in the middle, coming straight at you. And the sides are then, so let's say if you get that signal, and then you split it left and split it right, and then offset them just slightly so that there's a difference between the left and the right, what happens is your brain starts to recognize that there's a difference, one ear and the other, and that creates a stereo signal, and that's the basic core principle of what it is. So we can have a listen here to, I've muted the mids, and we can listen to this stereo. Kind of sounds like it doesn't exactly exist. It's always much weaker than a mono signal, and that's actually why your basses need to be mono.
And it's interesting, if you ever see a live band, you'll notice where people are placed in the stage, and there's a reason for that. The drums are always directly at you, the bass is really close to the drums, whereas the percussion and stuff can be like a bit more, and especially on a drum kit the way it's placed as well, but you could have other instruments that are sort of more wider. There's a whole spectrum of sound. It'd be really good, and I'm sure we'll give you this at some point, and you can download it off the internet anywhere. The whole spectrum of what sounds cover what and how that works is really good to know where the frequencies lie, especially if you're a beginner. It's really good to understand that, because then you'll understand where sub bass lives, where vocals live, where sibilance lives, and all those different things. It's just good to know.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a great little story. When I first started out and was sending my tunes to the mastering engineer, he would send it directly back and say, your stereo's out.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't have a clue.
Yeah. And Jamie says a good point, the Haas effect. It is the Haas effects, and you guys can look that up, but basically it's creating an effect that makes the mind perceive that something is wider than it is when it actually isn't. But a lot of times you can create this dynamic by just adding another sound and just opening up the stereo sides, and it just makes it appear wider, even though it's not actually wider, it's perceived wider by the brain. Our brains work in an odd way. So yeah.
They do. A great book is Your Brain on Music. I can't remember who it's by, but I can get that to you.
Oh, that would be interesting to know who the author is. That's great. Your Brain on Music.
Yeah, an incredible book, incredible read for me. Yeah, brilliant.
I'd hate to see what my brain's like on music. It's just because it's constantly like, I don't know if that would be scary to look at. Can you imagine if you could actually get a slice of your brain and look?
Yeah, so with the break, we'll make an even more heavier stereo layer now. Reverbs are usually stereo, delays are stereo. So we'll make that now, and it will become even
my
clearer.
Personality is stereo. Sorry, go on. I'm behaving.
I'm a bit mono, you see. Right, okay. So I've turned it down. Everything should be fine. No ears bursted today, so... There's the distorted layer that we've got again. I might just back it off just a little bit for this stereo layer. And that makes it so that we can turn this back up. Yeah, nice. Okay, so my go-to here, I'll probably, let's use Guitar Rig by Native Instruments, I believe.
Oh my God, I haven't used Guitar Rig for years.
Yeah, somebody recommended it to me. Said it was a good. What's it?
Yeah,
called?
Native are great, but since I got a new laptop, I just stripped it down to like 5 things that I need, because I was like, it's just full of stuff, and it slows down your computer. You know, if you imagine your computer needs a certain amount of space to breathe, which is why it always should have a certain amount of air left in the tank, so to speak. So if you fill it up with too many plugins, or you use even worse cracked plugins, oh my God, then it's slowing it down because it has to breathe faster and work harder to get through all the energy, which is why your CPU can start to lag.
Yeah, exactly. Good point.
Native is a beast.
Yeah,
It's a
definitely.
beast plugin. There's a lot. Look how many plugins are within Native. So when you download this, you've got like all these plugins within the Native folder. So yeah, it's a big beast.
Wicked. So let's go creative. Really, this is we're only doing a layer for the break, so let's go creative and see what our ears find pleasing. Not
Oh my God, that's not pleasing. Sounds like me in the kitchen. Can always hope.
That's cool. I think we could work with that. But it's a little bit too long.
Washy.
So if we have exactly washy. So if we have a look and just change the feedback with the delay, tape echo. This is really small. There we go. Apologies for that. I need my glasses apparently. Yeah, I really like that. Okay, so I'm going to bounce that then to this audio track. So again, take the audio input from...
Before you do that, Moisen, can you explain to everyone why you're putting an effect on the break and why you're doing this?
Yeah, sure. So as the tune progresses and things go on, have you ever listened to a tune by your favourite artist and thought, oh, it's so full and I can't figure out why I'm doing the same thing and it's full? What they're actually doing is they're making these layers which sort of sit very subtly behind it, and it just really emphasizes those different components. We're going to layer this dry break back on top of it, and we're also going to sidechain all of these effects so that everything cuts through really cleanly, and the effects are kind of really down in the background, but they make a massive difference, which we'll A/B them as soon as we're finished. So number 9 break, I'm going to just sample this. Okay, record. Lovely. And let's have a listen to that to make sure everything's all good. Yeah, okay. So now, if we play it with the layered break as well. And then now bring the dry break back in. Actually, wait, I need to turn off all of these, remember?
And before you all go nuts, wait for the side chaining, because that will make the difference. Because it sounds like a wall of sound right now, but the ducking will get rid of all that stuff and you'll see the point.
Yeah, and it'll give it a little bit of energy. It'll pump it as well.
Well, I'm just saying that. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just watching too. But that's what I presume it's going.
It is.
Oh, that's so good.
Just it gives it. And now if we A/B it,
it's giving it vibe.
Yeah, it's a lot. And remove that layer.
Wow, what a difference!
Bring them back in. Just going to jump into this reverb.
And of course, you're probably going to EQ that as well. But like, can you hear the difference of when? And it's not until you strip away those layers that you go, this sounds so bare. It's like when you put a little bit of reverb just on a hat, and then you A/B it and take it off. You're like, oh my God, that sounds so dry. But the moment you put those things on and you start doubling and layering sounds like this, it creates a vibe all on its own.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and the reason why I've ducked this a little bit here is because in this section sort of here, this is the musical range of any frequency spectrum. This is the bass, this is the sibilance, this is the musical range. So anything that's in this area is mainly the identifiable features of a track. You know, all the strings or anything like that comes in. So we want to fill the frequency spectrum up, but we do want to leave enough room. So I've just ducked that for now, and it will be subject to change. Let's incorporate the kick. And our snare. Good, I'm really happy with that. So I'm just going to colour this red so that we know that we're done, and we will work on sidechaining that kick to this break to make sure it punches through the mix. I like to use, for a sidechain, I like to use Shaperbox, which is instead of it being a compressor, which I know is quite a common way of using it, this is it's an audio transfer curve. So you're just telling the volume of where it needs to be, like in real time.
So for those of you who are just starting this sort of journey and just exploring this kind of thing, what you could do is get a drum break, put it on one channel, and then duplicate that channel, and you can start to mess with it, put some effects and create your own layers and start to phase it in, mix it in rather, and then you will start to get the same thing, and you can repeat that on multiple channels. You can create audio racks in Ableton where you have the dry chain and then you have a reverb chain, let's say, or maybe you have a compressed, overcompressed, or a distorted one. Like for a break, I'd probably have a distorted layer underneath, much like Moisten made, and then you could start to experiment. But essentially, don't get confused. It's literally parallel processing with effects in a way. It's like you've just got one sound that's the main dry one, and then underneath, because imagine if you had a vocal and the vocal was saying, you know, singing, and you just put a blanket of reverb over that, it would sound quite muddy. But if you have the effect, the same vocal underneath with the reverb, then the dry version is still coming through. I hope that makes sense for those of you who are beginners, because I know Moisten's doing some advanced stuff here. So, you know, those of you who are wondering what's going on, that's basically what we're doing. You're just adding layers underneath on top of the main one so that the main one cuts through, and then EQing those effects and stuff in the channel, and whether it's distortion, compression, whatever you're picking.
Yeah, and obviously if these things do sort of go a little bit over your head, or you find it a little bit hard to follow, then am I right in saying that they could email the question through?
Yeah, you can email us questions. Obviously, don't flood us because we had 400 questions since last Tuesday. It's taken me a week to get through them. But you can email me at teamproper. I'll drop it in the chat box, teamproper@gmail.com. So you can email me your questions at teamproper@gmail.com, and we will do our best to answer them in the next part 3, Open the Door, for sure. Let me just drop that in the chat so you guys know.
Wicked. So just while that's happening, we'll get back to using the sidechain. So in Shaperbox, you have the option to trigger with a MIDI, which is what we want to do. So I'll turn that on. And on our kick, which is, I believe it's this one. Let me just double check. Yep. So on this, I'm just going to create a new MIDI track that's underneath it. And just going to create a empty MIDI clip and put a note in. Now that's what's going to be used to trigger the sidechain. So I'll put it underneath each one of these kicks. In fact, I could duplicate that. There we go. And then on this MIDI, I'm going to rename it, name it something sensible. So it'll be sidechain trigger. No, wait, there we go. And we're going to send the MIDI output to where we put our shaper box. So this shaper box is on the breaks bus, and then it's detected there that it is shaper box that we want to trigger. And if you notice this little yellow box on shaper box here, now it should flash every time your kick is audible, which it's not doing because I haven't activated it. There we go. See that? That's the trigger coming through into Shaperbox. So with this now, what we need to do is we need to listen to the kick and the break at the same time so we can actually see the waveform.
I think what's interesting is that we both have very different ways of sidechaining. It's like I don't do this method for sidechaining, and it's a great method. So I think what we'll do next week is I will do how I do it, and then you do it, and it'll be fun to compare. Because on Ableton, it's really simple to do. You'll just basically set down a compressor on your channel and on the bass channel, for example, if you're sidechaining that, and you simply open up the compressor and select the kick, select what pattern you want, and you just play around with the attack release. You know, you want probably a short attack, blah blah blah, and then the ratio, and then you just have it. So this is a completely different way of sidechaining, and it's quite interesting to watch your process, Moisten.
Thank you. Yes, hopefully it's a good one.
Hope so.
So yeah, when we play this now, what we'll see is we'll see the waveform of the break inside this window. And we'll see that it sort of restarts every time that kick happens. So we know that what we want to do is get the volume out of the way just for that particular section. So let me exaggerate it so you can hear exactly what's happening. There we go, now if I turn it off. And back on again. So obviously we don't want it that much unless you do want that that
Got a question for you from James Allen. He says,
Yep.
doesn't your MIDI note length have to be really short for this?
That is a good question, because I thought it was in the first place, but however, no, it doesn't. The MIDI is only the moment that it happens, it sends a really quick trigger. And everything else that determines the speed is in this shaper box, so 1 bar length at the moment. But good question. So what we can also do here is on our pre-master we can have a look at that oscilloscope to make sure everything's clear and see how it's sort of looking over time. And just to drive a point home, this white line at the top and this white line at the bottom is our 0 decibel mark, so nothing should be coming over this. Yep, looks great to me.
Break sounds tight. It's good.
Thanks. So I think, as I said
Thanks.
earlier, now that you've done a bit, you sort of like start to address different things that you can hear within the mix. And now I think we should work on the snare. So let's have a listen. Okay, brilliant point to make here. So you see how that we've got sort of like a mismatch in colour here over the snare. So that's one there, and there's also one there. That's sort of like, that's going to give us a bit of a less powerful snare when we're doing it. So they're sort of clashing different transients at different times. So to address that, we would use sidechain as well. But just to make that snare, bring it to sort of 2023, we just sort of... what I like to do is insert another MIDI track, and we're going to put a MIDI clip on here and use kick 2 to layer a sine wave where the snare should be. So let me just loop this section so that we can hear it clearly. Okay. I'll colour this green as well so that we can see which bit we're working on. Lovely. Insert a MIDI note and then find our weapon of choice, which is kick 2. Nope, I'm not going to update now, I'll do that in my own time. So I do have presets, but instead of that we can quickly go through exactly what this is, and we can make one ourselves. So with kick 2 you have it's basically a sine wave generator, and you can choose the pitch and you can also choose the amplitude. Now at the moment it's going to sound nothing like a snare.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's my head
So-
after a night out. Sorry.
So with the time, we know if we think about a snare, it's quite quick. It doesn't last very long. So let's just start with that. Turn the length down.
So Sharp said, haha, I thought I was back in Holland then. Boom.
Gabba.
And that's how you make GABA, yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, with the amplitude, we want it to be quite loud. But with the pitch, this is where we can actually start tuning our snares to our tune. So this was in F, am I right? It was F?
Yeah, it was F.
lovely.
Sub-bass, friendly keys, people. Very important to know those keys.
Yeah, so F. So each stage of this snare, we're going to make sure that lands on an F. I mean, it could land up here. It doesn't really matter because this happens so quickly, but let's just do it for the sake of
this. Is something I used to get yelled at all the time by the mastering guys, like, your kick's not in key. It took me ages to learn how to do this and how important it was. And I was like, why is it so important? Okay, because I'm deaf. That's why I don't master my own music, because years of playing in clubs, unfortunately, I've lost a lot of frequency, so I'm unable to master. And who cares? I can send it to Daps. He's fantastic. You don't have to do everything. That's another thing I want to let you know. You don't have to do everything. But I think it's fascinating how I'm fascinated by stuff like this, tuning your kicks, getting every part of it in key. It makes such a difference to the track. And it's only when you don't do it that you realize how awful it sounds if you don't do it. It's mad, isn't it, how important this is?
Yeah, totally agree. That it's like I've got a tune that I made, let's say 3 or 4 years ago, and I've got a tune that I've made now. When I do use this method, you can just tell, but only once you've done it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's have a
bit like relationships. Sorry, never mind.
Okay, a little bit extreme, but we'll tune it and we'll get it so it's sounding a little bit more. I might turn it down a little bit, actually. Lovely. This
is why I work in headphones. Can you imagine having neighbours listening to that? Like, I do everything in these puppies because I don't need speakers. They're so good. But yeah.
She's making gabba.
Yeah. Something.
Okay, so obviously the snare from the break as well is sort of interfering with this. So what I'm going to do is just create a little sidechain. So insert the MIDI track. So this is driving home the same method as we did before. Insert the MIDI trigger. And this time, just for illustration, I'll make a very, very short MIDI note. Put that there, and we need to go to our breaks bus. Insert another shaper box.
Now, I don't want anyone out there who's a beginner to be frightened and overwhelmed by all of this. It is terribly, terribly overwhelming when you're new. And when we teach privately, it's step by step, super slow. I start with simple plugins and we build up to the big toys. We don't just jump in and go, you're going to do this. So don't be overwhelmed. It takes a long time to be a fluent producer. And, it's like scales. You have to practice and put the time in. And they say it takes 10,000 hours to become a master, but I can tell you it takes a lot more than that. And you've got to put the work in. That's why one of the first things, I have a waiting list for my private mentorship, and I only take 4 students a month, and they fill out a little online form, which is just 4 questions. And I say, how much time are you prepared to put in for homework? You don't have to do that much, but you have to do some every day, because if you just think you can just learn this in a month, it's not. And producers in the chat will know, and they'll tell you the same thing. Got to put in the time.
Yeah, agreed. So the shaper box has gone onto the breaks bus, and we're going to send this MIDI trigger to that. So that'll be under breaks, and we need to make sure we select the second shaper box now, because otherwise it'll be triggering the other one. And yeah, let's play it and have a listen.
Okay.
I'm just going to.
Another thing is a sub pack. Sub pack is a great. I have one. Oh, here it is. I have a sub pack. They're fantastic. They are. I love these things. You see it? Awesome. And
I need to get one.
Oh my god, that thing. I love my sub pack. Yeah, that's a good toy to have, especially when you've come in and you're a little I wouldn't say hammered, but if you had a couple of drinks and you want to listen to your tunes that you made, or you want to listen to your favorite mix or your favorite band or whatever, put the sub pack on. Yes. Probably not the most technical thing I could have said.
I could see how it works.
Josh, in one sentence, if possible, or 2 sentences for those who are beginners here and just wondering what's going on if they've just joined the chat, can you explain what you're doing to the snare and why you're adding these bits? What are you hoping to achieve for people who've just joined us or for newbies?
Yeah, that's a great point. So with layering the snare in this way, as the tune progresses, you get lots and lots of different bits of frequency information that's in the tune. You know, like you've got your strings, you've got your bass that comes in, you've got any other vocals that are coming in and stuff. This kind of thing is what makes your tune a lot crisper and a lot clearer, and it really gets everything else out of the way for this snare and the kick as well. And it just makes it so that you can hear it through it, and it just gives it that polished feel.
And you all thought you just stuck a kick and snare in there. God. It's like a relationship. You got to put stuff into it. You got to give it the time. You got to work really hard, which is why you don't have time for relationships. Jesus rice. That's another stream.
You kind of sit here, and I've sat here for hours and hours doing it, but this is kind of my relationship in a way.
Yeah. Well, I've always been married to music, and sometimes I cheat with acting. It's that simple.
Love it. So, key in this snare. Let's see if I might have changed it, and it might sound weird now.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. You heard it, didn't you?
Yes, I knew. It was like that chiropractor when he pops that joint in the right way, and you're like, yeah, it just popped. That was just right.
So let's put these on each of these snares now. Just get this one out of the way. So Control and E. And see, this is actually illustrating two ways you can do it. You can obviously put the sidechain on the brakes to get things out of the way, or you can just literally go through and manually move it out of the way as well, so that sharp little part of the snare can pop straight through. Let's have a listen to the whole break as a whole so far. Okay, needs a bit of mixing, so let's bring this down. Let's bring our snare up. What I'm going to do is just ensure that on our kick snare, yep, we've got the limiter. That's fine. On the drums, okay, so I've forgotten a limiter here, so I'll put a limiter now. So each of those groups are going into a limiter to control the peaks, and then we're also on the top of the drums bus going to put a limiter on there too, and that helps control everything before it gets to the pre-master. So I'll pop that on top here, and then this will be our final. And this is also quite a handy way to, you make this, you go through a few hours making these drums, and because you've got the limiter on and stuff, you can actually then bounce it out in place and save your own and make your own sample pack.
Just change the tuning of them, and you'll have different keys in each one, like just change the tuning, pitch, sample packs are not that hard to make.
Exactly.
Some good ones out there too.
Okay, I'm just going to go back into this kick too, because I feel as though...
Can you do me a favour before you do that? Can you just solo the kick and snare?
Yep.
So people can just see how empty that sounds without all the hard work you've just done. If you just had a kick and snare in your tune, for those of you who are newbies, this is what it would sound like if it didn't have any of those elements now, just for your kick and snare. Mental, isn't it?
Even then, just with that extra little break.
Now put it all back. You've got such a vibe there just with the drums. Good job.
Thank you. So, back into the drums, and I'm just going to check, have a little look, have a little fiddle around with the volumes to get it so that the break sounds exactly how it's supposed to be, and then we can develop the idea from there.
For those of you just joining, sorry, Moisen, we will be doing a Q&A and questions that we've received for the last part of this. So I think we'll go for a bit longer still, but because we're finishing at 9:30. So for those of you who aren't really interested in production but want to know about artist life, other questions, all the questions. So people who sign up to the Open the Door are the questions we answer. You have to sign up before you send us your questions. So sign up, we look at those questions, they get priority over all other questions. We can't get to everybody. So do sign up. I'll put the link in again, and send us your question via email that way, and those will get priority. So we'll go through those either the last half hour or 3/4 of an hour for those of you who are waiting patiently.
Okay, lovely. So on the, I'm going to unsolo everything. Lovely. And let's have a quick look. Just, yeah, like I said, I'm going to adjust the volumes and get the break sounding quite full. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to put the oscilloscope on here so that we can all have a look and see what it looks like, because everyone likes to know what their break looks like. If it works. Okay, I feel just to add a little bit to this snare, I'm just going to put a reverb on it just to give it that little bit of a stereo layer like we did with the break as well. I feel like the snare is quite important to have that. And I like to use Melda's convolution reverb. I think, Rap, you used this last week?
Yeah, we love Melda.
We love the Melda.
I'm just dropping the link here for the DAW. And of course, it's in all my social media posts as well, the link, for those of you who are interested. And we do send a trimmed down version. I will patiently edit this stream down to the nuts and bolts. And I send that to all people who've signed up.
So with the reverb, I think try a few of these box ones because they're quite short and they just make it sound like it's sort of literally in a box and it doesn't overwhelm the track. I like that, that's nice, but I feel like then it needs a bit of a high layer. So if I insert an audio track and then find a snare that we find has a nice high sort of texture to it, we can pop that over it.
James Allen is saying, do you guys use transient shapers as well?
Yeah, have done. I could put one on. And I was thinking about maybe using one, so
Ooh.
Nice.
Yes is the answer.
Yeah, I could have. I overcomplicate things. I do sometimes.
Do you see I had to physically restrain myself from saying anything? I was going to say, yeah. See, that's the one thing that was really difficult for me when I started doing music. I felt like everybody was showing me stuff and it was so complicated, and so my approach is much more production for not production for dummies, but you know how guitar for dummies, I just want to make it as simple as possible, because especially when I was teaching in LA, I was teaching so many girls and we're wired differently. The way our brains are set to acknowledge information, like guys will stick their nose in a manual and that's fine. They're brought up back in the day with their dads to fix garage cars and they're breaking things apart and putting them together, but girls were brought up a little bit differently. So when I was teaching female students, I had to approach things from a very different angle, and because it was the same way I needed to learn. It's quite interesting how it all works.
Oh, I've lost my cursor. Bear with me, sorry. Okay, right, snares. So okay, that one's really nice. Just sort of layering a little high layer on there just to make it so that it really fills out the frequency spectrum, and get that out the way. I'll tell you what, I will colour this one red as we usually do, and I'll colour this one green so we know and can see which one we're working on. A little bit high, a little bit too loud, and let's go and put an EQ on it just to make sure that we are putting the right frequency where we intend to do it. Okay, there we go. So let's have a listen.
Is it just me, or is that snare like a wet fish slapping you around the face?
I guess that's a good thing.
Because that's what it's supposed to really spank. It's supposed to really cut through and be like that. And that's why you lay your snare with a tops, mids, and a bass part, not literally a bass. I don't mean that, but the same way you'd layer a sound, like it needs to have that. It needs to really cut through all the frequencies. So it's a lot of work, as you can see, but worth it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because have you ever been at a club or something and you feel as though, like Rap said, that the snare it really does hit you, and it's kind of like, whoa, that's a lot. And what that is high frequencies don't hit you; they don't move air as much as the sort of lower mid range do. So if you do layer a lower snare onto it, like this is the kick two that's doing that. If I could solo the right one, there we go. That there with a speaker when it's really loud is really going to push the air.
Punch.
And it's really going to get you. Yeah, exactly.
It's going to give you that punch. As Dillinger said, it's when you feel it in your chest.
Big up Dillinger.
It ain't too loud. Love Dill. He's the best.
Yeah, so it's that that's giving that. You could even go just a little bit lower. Now at this moment, just troubleshooting as we go through, I feel as though that the break now, yes, okay, the break is quite a high, it's responding quite high, so I might just even emphasize that a bit more and then find another break, just a little couple of ghost hats or something that inject you in that sort of low end and give it a little bit more groove in this sort of musical range that we were talking about. So I'm just going to turn it down just a little bit and go through some other little breaks that we can find a little section to come out of and drag it in and see what happens. Okay, I quite like that. I don't think it should happen so often. Oh, nice. I don't think it should happen so often, but...
I'm so glad you didn't mangle my track. Just kidding.
No, I was worried about that. I'm not going to lie.
So what's he going to do to it? I'm just playing. It's just friendly bants.
Got to have a bit of bants. If you don't laugh, you'll cry.
No.
Okay, so I think it was this section. Okay, return the volume back, and I know obviously that's like an extra kick, but we can use that to our advantage and EQ the real lows out of it.
Sorry, can I stop you a sec? Can you guys see how it's becoming one whole drum loop? So when you see those sample packs and they're whole complete loops, this is probably all the work that some poor producer has spent hours doing to make, the loops. But it becomes one whole cohesive sound. You can't tell which break. Once it's mixed properly, it's already starting to sound all glued together like one cohesive, original new drum loop with all the elements in it, which is really cool.
Yeah, and you can, when, let's say if you're not feeling creative and making a whole track, I've sat here loads trying to imagine how a drummer sort of does his thing or her thing, and like trying to sort of get the grooves right, and then I do this and then bounce it, and then I've got a load of different breaks that are moisten breaks that you can switch up and get in.
And for those of you asking, yes, you can get a free trial of Ableton. It's for 90 days. It's the Ableton Lite version. It doesn't come with all the bells and whistles, not all the instruments, but enough to get you started. And what I tell my students is download the free Lite version like a couple of days before we start. That's if they're learning Ableton. And this is what I'm teaching, that door. And then if they like it, they can go all in. But it's pretty cool. You can do that. And also students get a 40% discount, I believe, on the Ableton site. So that's cool.
Nice. So yeah, so this happening too often was a little bit too much. So now I've sort of expanded the loop and then just carried everything over. And that means that we've got to do a little bit of work here with these snares, getting them out of the way. See, this is the disadvantage of doing it manually, and the advantage of having the MIDI trigger just here is that you can just duplicate and then move things around. Okay, let's have a listen. Okay, wicked. What you could do with this particular section as well is add a little bit of a reverb on there. Again, I use a convolution reverb because it's nice and short, and we can get it sitting in a certain space. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I think that's definitely a break that I would probably resample and save. Let's just have a look. Might just do that now to demonstrate. So I will insert an audio track below the drums. Hit that for arm, and make sure the input's set to drums, and we'll just record that loop. There we go. There's the lovely waveform that we just created.
It'd be really funny if this didn't fit the bass line. We haven't heard the bass for like an hour. It's like, what's happening? You know, it's cool.
We haven't. So, okay, the moment of
it's going to be really mad to get all your stems for next week and then throw me in the end of the pool in the deep end and see what I do. It'd be mad.
Okay, the bass wasn't working at the start, was it? So
no, but just whilst you look for that, Moisin, just so you know, it's 8:45. So I think we're going to get through some questions pretty soon. Hopefully Moisin can find that bass and we can crack on for a little bit longer. But we do have an awful lot of questions to get through, so I'm not sure half an hour will be enough, but I'm going to try and do that. So maybe at 10:02 we can start the questions or something.
Of course, yeah, definitely.
So we don't have much time left. If everyone's all right with that, I think we should do some questions because people have a lot of questions, and this isn't just a production stream. It's also about all your DJ questions, artist life, business, music business, all of that stuff.
Cool. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is interesting.
Have we lost my Reese?
I think I have. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Where did it run away to?
Sorry,
you've got other sounds in there anyway. So is that pretty much everything you would have done? Well, this is a good opportunity. So you could just make a Reese real quick and it'll play the same notes if you want to do that. For those of you, we did this last lesson. We just maybe it's because it's Did I send you the MIDI or did I just? I can't remember what I sent you. Anyway, but yeah. So we just pop open a serum, and you can see what Moisin is going to do here is just use analog shapes and use probably a square, or not square, sorry, saw, because it's got the highest frequencies. And he's just going to turn the unison up probably to 2 and detune, use the detune button just to dial in those extra harmonics. It's doubling it basically. And then he'll probably pop over on oscillator a B and do the same thing, but put the pitch up on 1, and then you'll just have a very basic Reese.
Yeah,
of course, won't be as good as my one, but you know.
Definitely not.
Gotta tell you this.
Yeah, so this may be me. This may not be the Reese, but that means yours might work. I may have found
definitely not my Reese.
That's the one, right?
See, the interesting thing is though, is that the bass, yeah, that's the one. Good job. The interesting thing is that my bass will change and go, it's doing a call and response. So this is the start, and then it jumps into a jump up section because I wanted to show you guys last week how to make those triplets and jump up bass lines and things like that, basically using a shaper box, which is so easy if you're not a good programmer. So yeah, I'm curious to see. Maybe that's what we'll have to figure out what he's going to do with the drums next, now that he's got this jump up section in there. Yeah,
Yes,
spent all
definitely.
this time on that break, didn't you? And you weren't expecting that jump up.
Wasn't it? Oh, I've made a roller drum set and now I need a jump up drum set.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure people would love to see that too.
Okay, cool. So that's the whole section then. So if I put...
Yeah, awesome. Have you saved, by the way?
No, I'm going to do that now.
Please. So don't forget, when you're saving, you also got to hit collect all and save, and it will save everything within the app for the new guys, and it will save everything together. You can't just save it. You have to also go collect all and save.
So nice reminder, by the way. That's awesome. So far,
That's what they pay me the big bucks.
Has that done it? Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, nice one. So I will duplicate the break over and see how the break sits. Hang on. See how the break sits within that jump up
A
section.
neat trick that I do, and everyone's going to go, she's completely bat mental for this, but I'll take the MIDI for the bass that I've made and I'll extract it and I'll put that on the drums. And sometimes you can just get mental, like drum patterns by doing that. And it's really interesting. Or I will copy like the bass pattern and extract that and put that on a side chain so that the side chain is playing the triplet ducking, which is pretty cool as well. I don't think I'll have to show you guys that next week.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to see it as well. Again, new to Ableton, so that sounds like quite interesting to me.
Well, one of the things that I learned was when I was teaching Ableton in LA and I was doing this was that how to teach Ableton without any third-party plugins. So everything, because Ableton's got everything you could possibly need in it. And once you know how to use it and every single parameter and what it does, it's a monster beast. So my goal was to be able to fully finish everything without, I think I only had like one synth in the end. And then I went mad and had loads of plugins. But yeah, you can do everything within there. It's got some amazing toys.
Wicked. Okay, Reese, jump up, let's go. No, I've got to go over again, haven't I? It's further.
I think it's further, I don't know. I can't remember. It was a week ago since I did this.
Straight across here.
Too bad. Not too bad, but you're going to have to change some stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's these guys didn't quite go, and yeah, we'll sort of mix it down. Should I sidechain the bass quickly? Have we got time?
Yeah, I would. I think people want to see sidechaining, definitely.
Okay, cool. All right, so sidechaining the bass, what I would do, we'll focus on the Reese bass for a second.
I think that's funny. People who join have probably been like, why are we just doing drums for like, where's the bass line?
Literally, I kind of went down a rabbit hole there.
No, you've done amazing. It's really been interesting. I love watching the process.
Okay, so what we doing? Sidechain. Okay, so on the kick, so that we can keep it quite organised, I'll insert a new MIDI track, and once again, well, actually, I could copy the one that we've done earlier, which is there. Okay, pop that up there, and then we can send this to our bass bus, right? And the bass bus needs to have a shaper box on it. Same process as earlier. Volume, and make sure the MIDI trigger is turned on. Just here. Put that down there for a second, and send that MIDI trigger to the bass bus, which is finding things in a huge list. As your project gets bigger, this is why naming things is, on my part, quite important, because I've added quite a few here and I've not named them sensibly.
Ugh, that's because you're a guy. Women are very tidy in their door. I'm just kidding. Like, I'm really organized. Everything's color coordinated. It's all named. Otherwise, I just lose where I am and then I panic. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be sexist.
No, it's
then.
true. I got it and I knew where everything was. And as soon as I've started tampering with it, it's like, okay.
Someone was asking about the wobble bass. I would suggest you watch last week's stream. You can get them on my YouTube channel. If you go to the live page, you can go to my Facebook page. But if you sign up to the Open the Door newsletter, which is on my website underneath the Open the Tribe tab, or Join the Tribe tab, everything's under there, then I send everybody a cut down version of this stream without all of this talking and stuff. It's literally showing you all the stuff we're doing.
Nice. Okay, so let's just check, see if that MIDI trigger is working, which it is, which is great. And then we simply draw in the curve. Okay, lovely. So what I'm going to do is just to show what an effective sidechain should look like. Lots of S's in there. Is I'll solo the kick, which now see, this is my organisation. Got to remember which one I used.
I'll show you guys a really simple way to sidechain for those of you who are new at some point next week, whenever. We'll pick up from here. But cool. This is detailing, and you can really decide how much of that chain you're letting in, how much you're not. It's really detailed, and you can see it visually represented in this, which is kind of a cool way of doing Shaperbox and using it.
Yeah, so I've soloed the kick and the bass. Okay, so I actually need to also enable the MIDI trigger. What I'm going to do is slide this across so that we can only focus on the lower region, and I'll solo it. And then what you can do is you can, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of the sidechain, is bring up the oscilloscope and you can watch sort of what's happening when you're getting the bass out of the way of the kick.
Oh, this is good. So I love this.
Yeah, so you see how I'll freeze it. So that's our kick here, which is happening, and then the bass comes back up in volume here to this maximum point. Now, to maximize the loudness in the track and the energy that it's got, we sort of know that, look, the bass needs turning up. So straight away, I can come down, I can go to the bass and just sort of turn it up until it starts to look right. So now as well, we sort of know that when the sidechain happens, you see this shape here, what's happening is it's ducking down just here where the kick is. And then we're instructing the volume to return back to 100%, which you can see in this sort of shape here. It's sort of coming up. And we know that if we want to maximize the energy and the volume, we can sort of bring this in, and you'll notice that that sort of starts to disappear and sort of morph into the kick. So if there was no sidechain, we turned it off, there. There's a little thing called ribboning, which is here, and you sort of the waveform sort of goes like this with the kick, and then when it starts to transverse into the bass, it kind of does a weird little jump, and that's called ribboning, and that's when it's like you don't want that really. So that's the whole purpose of the sidechain, is to make sure that it's out the way and then it returns back to its full volume at the right time. And a compressor is actually excellent at this. A compressor is really good at doing this. You just have to play with the attack and the release.
Our music said, do we ever pitch up our beats? Yes, we do. We crossed that earlier. We were talking about how you can do that with all your breaks, beats, pitch them up, kicks, snares. So absolutely. We've got 5 more minutes, and then we're gonna hit the questions that we've had from the whole week from everybody who's signed up on Open the Door, and try to get through them. So you've got 5 minutes. Can you do it?
Yeah, I'll try.
Finish the whole
Right, so
tune in 5 minutes.
race against the clock. That's a good content idea.
Yeah, race against
Right,
the
so-
BPM.
Yeah. So that should be our sidechain realistically, and we can open up this high range again so we can get the full range of the bass. Now, obviously, that's really loud. So now see, as we go, we sort of address another problem. So, okay, let's go to the bass and let's start sort of getting to this wave shaper and getting it sounding so that it fits.
Oh, I like that rumble.
Wicked. And then we can incorporate the break again. Hopefully the break fits. Wicked. Then let's open it up and let's listen to the jump up section.
Lots of high frequencies in there that need some work, but yeah, I think that's really sounding like it's beginning to be glued together now and start to do stuff. Make sure you save that. And I think it would be a good point to stop. I'm not sure what we'll do next week, because it might be better for you to continue where you left off, and then I'll do the arranging and all that stuff, whatever, we'll work it out. But hopefully this has been a good step into how much work goes into just creating a break, and into, you know, I mean, Moisen took a very deep dive into it, as I knew he would. So yeah, I think it'd be a good point to save that and just get into some of the questions, because obviously there's a lot of people here that want to know about other stuff as well. Are you comfortable doing that, Moisen? Is that good with you?
Absolutely. Sounds good.
All right, I'm going to remove your screen from here and put you back on. Good job. Big hand of applause for you. Good job, mate.
Thank
That
you.
was intense. Like, my brain is like, I actually just want to make music right now. Okay, so this is the part of Open the Door where we spend the last half hour getting to your questions, where we try and help you and share a bit of knowledge with you. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so any legal questions, I can only give you my opinion, but please seek expert advice when it comes to contracts. It's worth it. Okay, let's go through some of the questions. So Anthony Walsh was talking about mono versus stereo panning. We haven't done panning, but we will get to that. But Anthony, we've sort of covered some of the stereo stuff. Dan Cooper says, so I use Ableton Live Full Suite. I pull up an audio file, convert it to MIDI, then when laying my sound over it, will only let me lay a MIDI sound or instrument, and will not let me lay a sound from a synth plugin. I'm trying to place a sound that I have created in Vital over the converted file, and it just won't happen. Please help. What do I do? It sounds to me, and that's all the information I've got, but it sounds to me like you don't have that synth installed in your Ableton session. Basically, it will play any synth, but it has to be part of what's installed. So make sure you've installed your third-party plugins in Ableton, do a rescan, it will scan everything and make sure it's there, and then, so you have to put Vital into it. It won't just, you can't just have Vital somewhere and drop it down. What would you say? Does that sound about right, that he hasn't got it installed properly?
Yeah, and if it is the case that it is installed, just go and make sure it's dragged onto that channel rack, and you can see it's there when it's in the bottom left.
Absolutely, and make sure it's armed as well. Troy Robinson says, if you could go into the process of getting your track ready for mastering, it'd be fantastic. I know you stated that you don't do your own mastering, nor do I want to, nor am I interested, but just the process before. I think we'll leave that, Troy, to the very last session, because hopefully we'll be ready to export this if we can get it done that quickly. But basically, you want to export your stems with all the limiters off and at -6 dB, and you want to make sure that I mean, I'll show you my process, because I'm pretty anal about how I do it. I export some people just export everything in one go. I don't do that. I export every single channel individually, and then I group them so that my mastering guy gets the drums in a folder, the synths in a folder. I mean, I go over the top. In fact, when I did that Roughest Gun Art remix of Blade Runner, he turned around and sent me an email and said, I've never met anybody who sent me stems like this. It was just joyous to work that way. And it makes other people's life easy. I will get to that when we get to the end of this tune. A question for the next, would EQ or wait till everything's laid out? Again, that's down to everybody's personal taste. You see, Moisen is EQing along the way and getting to it. Moisen, could you just take a look at the chat and keep, whilst I'm doing the questions, by the way, if we could swap, that'd be great. Yeah. But I wait until the very end. All I do is just roll off basic EQ, the bass frequencies. I have my EQ set to do that. It's already, I pull it into my DAW that way. And that way I just know that the bottom end at 100 Hertz is all shaved off for everything except for sub bass. But it's down to you how you work. For me, I want to wait till I've got a vibe. Okay, Click Stephen. He says, I've had very good feedback from some big names regarding my tunes, but wonder why they decided not to release them. That's a good one. Okay, look, people are generally polite. But I tell you what, most people who are big names, if they are like me, then they are really busy, and you only have time to respond if something's really good. So I suspect they genuinely really like the track. God, I could do 2 hours just on how to send your tracks for demos, how to get the right response, how to not draft an email. It could be that the way you presented the email wasn't right. So my advice to you is, if you're presenting a track to somebody, the way you phrase the email is really important. First off, one track, private SoundCloud link, because if it's publicly out there for everyone to see, there's no incentive for them to release it, obviously. So a private SoundCloud link saying, hey, let's pretend you're sending a track, right? Hey, DJ Rap, been a fan of Proper Talent since Spiritual Aura, because a little flattery never hurt. And, would love you to listen to my track. Here it is. Here's my contact info. Any constructive feedback would be great. It could be that you sent a demo. Do not send demos. You have to send fully mastered tracks. Don't put a whole story about your life. Like, well, I live in Manchester. It rains a lot. And so I'm in my basement and I'm really depressed. And so I started making music when I was 5. No one cares. Like, no one's got the time. So just be professional, because they want to make sure they're not dealing with a nutter, right? So I want to see an email that comes across that says, here's a track. I know your label. I'm familiar. Another thing I get is a lot of people sending me emails saying, DJ Rap, check out my hip hop tune. That tells me basically you've not done your homework, and I'm just going to ignore that email, right? So it could be the way you presented the email. It could be that it's not. And here's another important thing. If you're sending me a trance track and I'm a drum and bass label, your track might be great, but it's not the right fit. Also, so do your homework on the label. Last week we talked about Beatport and what a great resource that is. If you want to find your genre and study the labels, you can do it that way, because it gives you all the top labels. It gives you all that, and you can take a deep dive and really look at those labels and see if that's a good fit, because I'm sure they don't want 2 of the same artists on their label, so, or it could be that they are looking for that specific sound. So you got to do your homework on the label. It's quite a long answer to this because there are so many do's and don'ts, but I hope that help. It could be that they just were being polite, but you could follow up with another email and say, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that. I know how busy you are. Would you have any interest in this before I start to shop it around? Because that tells them 2 things. You're my first choice, which is great, and that you are going to shop it around. So there's a time limit and you're not going to wait around forever. So a follow-up email could be good. I hope that helps. With regarding to getting a tune mastered and experience, would you say it's safe for someone not to copy your track, melody, main concept when passing to a third party? I mean, it would ruin their reputation if they nicked it, wouldn't it? So if you want to get your tunes mastered, we recommend, because we use DAP's audio compound. Moisen, would you be able to put that link in the chat?
Yes.
For DAP's? I mean, no, they're not going to copy it, I mean, I tell you what, mastering guys have all the tunes though, I'll tell you that now. And if they ever did want to screw you over like you didn't pay them, I'd hate to get on the wrong side of them. But no, you don't. I mean, always deal with professionals, right? So people that we're recommending would never do that, so you've got no worries there. Let's talk about that though, not mastering people, but how you can protect your tune. One of the things I always suggest to people when you are doing a collab is a simple writer's agreement saying both of you did the tune, your name, address, the date the tune was done. Back in the day, before the internet, that's how old I am, we used to put our tapes in a package and mail them to ourselves and keep them sealed. And that was recorded delivery, which showed who made the tune first. Now everything's time stamped and you don't have to do that, obviously, but because you've got an email that's time stamped, you've got your DAW session that's time stamped. But I always think that where there's a hit, there's a writ. And I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who've told me they've had a massive tune out. I've gone, oh, that must have made you loads of money. They've gone, well, this happened, we got sued. The sample was in it, wasn't art, and all this crap. So it's really important to have a simple writer's agreement, one page, name of the track, both of your artist names, your real names. You both sign it, and you both put the name of the track in there and your address in that. And that is a simple agreement saying, I split this tune 50-50. And that's our agreement. That will suffice. It's a simple way to protect yourself. And if someone walks into a session with you don't know and they're not prepared to sign an agreement, walk away. Walk away. In fact, run. Because you're protecting them and you.
I'll second that. I should have definitely done that, because there's been an instance where I've released a tune and it's actually done really, really well on Spotify for me. And there was no contract, and the guy has completely ghosted me. And I keep politely asking, what's happening with the royalties, what's happening with this, and yeah, there's no leg to stand on. There was no contract made, and it's a mistake I've made.
Well, you kind of do have some legs to stand on. You could go Italian and put a horse head on his pillow, Godfather style. No, that you've got some legs to stand on. I mean, if legally a label has to account to you, and even if you've not got a contract, you have given them the track. But that's a whole thing. And, at the end of the day, I think that if that was me, I'd be like, well, I'm putting my tune out anyway. You haven't accounted me, you haven't done anything, and I'd make sure that was in an email. So if it ever went to court, you've got that email chain where the guy's not responding or the girl's not responding, whoever it is not responding, and you put the tune out, do what you want with it. Because what they're going to do, sue you for 100 downloads. Like, please try, I welcome it. So I mean, you do have a leg to stand on, but it's whether you can be bothered to bring your guns to every war. You've got to pick your battles, I guess. Okay, so we've done what are stems, what is sidechaining, we've done that more or less. Do you build your synth sounds from scratch? Do you use a preset as a starting point? We covered that in the last lesson, so please go back and watch the last Open the Doors that are in our Facebook and YouTube and Twitch tutorials, or sign up and you would have had the trimmed down version to Open the Door. And just to remind you again, that sign up page is on my website under the Join the Tribe tab. Okay, let's see.
A quick question from somebody in the chat.
Yes.
It actually says, 2 seconds, let me just get that up.
You can put show and it will show in the timeline here for everyone if you want.
Got you. So, it says here, I don't see where to submit questions other than the general contact tab. My question may be silly, but I'm always wondered how DJ Rat felt about BT or M Doughty rewriting. Never going to come back down?
How do you mean, how do I feel about it? It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. I mean, Brian Transo was one of the king of trance, and he practically invented it. And, he came to me and said, would you mind if we write a track? Actually, my mate Doughty was asking me for your number. And so I wrote a song about it, and it's called Never Gonna Come Back Down. We'd love you to be in the video. Kind of like in hip hop, how we all jump in each other's videos. We were doing that. And because BT and I were signed to major record labels at the same time, we sort of grew up together going through that experience. We were best mates for many, many, many years. I adore that guy, and he's so clever. It's beyond clever. So yeah, I felt great about it, really. Let's see. I've got a question here saying, you said when you returned to the UK you had to relearn how to produce. Did you stop writing music completely whilst away, or just not keep up to date with new production techniques? No, I signed a record deal with Sony, and I was working with pop electronica and bands, and I just stepped away from drum and bass for a while because it was going through it was just before garage was invented. And what happened was it just became very much about people were just discovering sound design and really getting into that, and it became almost tuneless, and there was a patch of music that I think just became soulless. And for me, coming from that happy hardcore era and all those other eras, I was just missing the melody. And so when I signed my record deal with Sony, I went to America and I lived there for 22 years, and I toured relentlessly doing drum and bass, doing all of that stuff. But I was solely focused on my obligations to the record company, which was to produce pop electronica, which is what I wanted to produce. And I did loads of music for tons of films for ESPN. And if you go to IMDb, you'll see all the films that I've done musically and stuff. So I was just focused on that. And then when I came back, and I found myself hanging out in England, and I went to a hospital party, and I found myself dancing on a speaker, and I think DJ Metric was playing, and I just burst into tears because the tunes were so good, and I just was like, oh my God, the melody's back. This music's so good again. Like, it's so good. Why have I been away so long? And sometimes you have writer's block. I couldn't write anything for a long time that was drum and I just didn't understand what was going on. I did not like it. I didn't understand it. And sometimes you just got to take a break, man. And these things happen. I was musically what I call impotent writing music for drum and bass. It took me a long time. It wasn't until I came back and I heard people like Serum and Blade Runner and people like that and what they were doing. I was like, this is so good. And I can do this. But I did have to relearn everything because it was completely different from when I'd been in the studio. I mean, my first record was 1988. Do you know what I mean? So it was very, very different. So yeah, before you were all born. All right. James Markroff would be keen to hear about your creative process for building that tune and software, hardware you made on it. So in the mid 90s and how it was different today. He's talking about hard step. And I think that's actually a beautiful segue into the next question because how I made tunes back in the day, and I've still got it up here. It's my Akai sampler. You used a Kurzweil sampler or an Akai in those days, and you would be doing the time stretching, that all that stuff. And I used Cubase back in the day. And in fact, I started on Cubase, then I went to Notator, then I went to Logic. I went through all of the DAWs until I found Ableton, and then I was like, Ableton, cheese sauce rice. So, it was love at first sight. But the thing is that, we would use those tracks, and how it worked is that I would go out, listen to the tracks, and I'm sober now, but I'd get slightly hammered, and I'm not saying you should do this, but this was what I did. And I still felt I had the remnants. I just felt I was still connected to the night before. And I'd go to a big studio. I went to Monroe Studios and I would start to produce on a big Neve desk, which is about 250 grand desk. It wasn't mine. I'd rent the studio and they'd have the samplers. So it was very different. You didn't have all the equipment in your house. You went to a studio that had this mass, and that's why everything sounded so warm and lovely. It was analog. It was incredible. And, you often had an engineer that helped as well. And that's where I met Voyager, and we started to make tunes together. And it was a completely different experience. I can't tell you how much I miss those days and making music that way. And we're going to launch a subscription for Open the Door at some point in the future, I'm sure. And one of the things I'd love to do is a masterclass where we hire a massive studio and take, students to it and have them experience what that was like. Because I think would blow your mind more than anybody to know what it's like to mix on 100%. A desk. It's an incredible experience. There's just nothing like it. Okay, you say that you only use a USB when you DJ, not software. Do you use any software to prepare your tracks, cue points, etc.? So how do you prep your digital tracks, or how do you just treat them the same as if you're playing? Okay, so my process for doing this, and I've had playful bants and arguments with DJs like my mate, like V-Dubs, where she's like, just use record books. And I'm like, I don't want to use record books. And she's like, just use it. And I'm like, no, use it. No, use it. No. And we get into a whole thing where I'm like, look, your process is yours. Mine is mine. I go into Ableton. I load. So this is how it works. I get about 200 to 300 tracks a month, promos, from in-flight, from people sending me tracks, whatever. I load them into a folder and label it the month, and then I sort of ignore it. And then right before I have a massive gig like this Friday and playing Ministry of Sound, I go, okay, oh God, I've got to go through all these tracks. And then, so I'll listen to them all. And that's a laborious process because a lot of them are, there's a lot of listening before you can narrow it down to like 20 tracks out of 300 that you think are good. And then it might end up being 10. So I'll listen to them all. And then once I decide that I really like those 20 tracks, I'll drag them into Ableton. I'll set the locator to bar 9 and I'll do an edit of each track so that I can just drop them in at bar 9 basically, and so 8 bars and then it drops, and that's how I edit my tracks. And then I might do some audio jitsu to couple of tracks, I might feel like, oh, that would have been good if that just repeated there. So I'll chop and I'll do different things and I'll sort of remix the tracks, or not often, because most people make great tracks and I don't want to bastardize their music. But, sometimes I might want to put an end to a track because I want it to be a clean part to mix in and mix out. And just whatever I feel it needs. So that's my process with that. Again, everyone's got their own process and that's just mine. I'm sure Rekordbox is easier, but I can't be asked. I'm happy with my process. Okay, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What is your take on Reason packages, please? I don't know. Do you use Reason, Josh?
Nope, never used it.
I'm on 11 with some upgrades. Thanks in advance. Would like to know differences a bit. I mean, oh, you mean in terms of which door to use, Maria? Is that what you're asking? Which is your take on Reason packages, please? I'm on 11 with some upgrades. Thanks in advance. I mean, look, whatever works for you. I don't use Reason, so it would be better to probably ask people who use Reason or to Google it. But I'd like to know differences. Ableton package does look a lot simpler. I mean, I don't want to say Reason is worse or better because I haven't used it, so I can't compare. And that would be unfair to people that use Reason or the makers of Reason. So I'm sure if you put your question in the chat, other people who are using it, they will help you out because they're lovely like that. There you go. Voyager is Reason is fun, but not the one. Bless. I mean, look, for me, it's Ableton. But the thing is, if you start switching doors and you're really good at one thing, and I never forget this, like, I think I said this last week, it was either Ronnie Size or someone who said this to me, learn one thing, learn it backwards, forwards, inside out. Because you can do anything if you can do that, It's better to be a master of one than a jack of all trades and a master of none. Okay. We are at... Can you explain the process of beat? Well, we've done that. Okay. Compression. How to navigate the industry, how to deal with... So this is Adrian, and he's saying how to navigate the industry, how to deal with people in the industry and the realities of it, promoters, which people are referring to. So I think I asked him to expand on that because it's pretty broad. How to navigate the industry, in what way? I'm not really sure I can answer that until I have a more definitive, narrowed down version. So yeah, Adrian, if you could actually send me what you mean, and I'll be specific in what you mean, whether it's dealing with, I'd put here in brackets, how to deal with promoters, which people you're referring to. So I'm not sure what you're referring to. If you could just send me a question with more specifics, I'll be happy to answer that for you. This is a question, I think, for Moisin. Have you got the questions there, Moisin? It says, I'm using Audacity
Sorry.
All right, so this is for you, Moisin. I'll let you jump in because my throat is killing me here. I'm using Audacity and sample packs, which I guess is a great starting point, question mark. Which computer to use with which brand? Go down the laptop or desktop route. Do you know which question I'm talking about? You seeing that there?
Yes.
All right, let you take over.
Okay, so regarding samples and Audacity, that is, I mean, I still use Audacity now. Like, I'll record things in the background, chop it up and slice it, and it's a fantastic tool. It's free and it just works. So, like you said earlier, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And regarding desktop or laptop, it depends on your circumstance. If you want to be portable and mobile with it, then laptop for sure, 100%. But what you've got to consider is that the DAWs do actually take quite a lot of CPU and they do require quite a lot of power. So it will have to be a high-end laptop. But if you're just going to be at home and you're sort of always going to be there, then I would go for the desktop PC, because as things update, you can always get newer hardware and you've just got that bit more of a powerful thing. But saying that, laptops are really powerful now, so it depends on if you want to be mobile or not.
Awesome sauce. Good job. There's another question here for you, Moisin, from Dean. Does Ableton work on computers running the Windows 11 OS? Does the Windows version work just as well, or are there variations between the two versions? Because you actually use a PC, don't you? You use a PC.
Yes.
Swearing. PC. I'm a Mac girl all the way. It's Mac all the way. PC stands for piece of crap. No, I'm kidding.
I can't say what Apple stands for. So So that question there, I've actually just upgraded to Windows 11. I took a plunge and I was absolutely cacking myself because, to be honest, I didn't know. But now I'm on Windows 11 and I actually really love it. So yes, it will work. I mean, be cautious if you get a 64-bit or 32-bit operating system. Just make sure your plugins align with that 64-bit or 32.
Okay, traitor. Okay, what are headphones for? Huh? What are headphones for? To know exactly when to cue or mix the next track into the overall mix show. Oh, bless. As well as when to insert the special effects into it too. So, okay, obviously, where do I start? There's a very if you're really new to this, so yes, your headphones. It's almost like, you know, when you drive a car and you have your first driving lesson, and the driving instructor says you got to check your mirror first. Now I can't remember the last lesson, Moise, and what this was like, but aren't you supposed to check the mirror first? And then something else, and then something else. Thank God I don't have a car. But you've got to do a series of things, and at first it seems like it's really complicated, right? But then before you know it, you're checking your mirror, you're looking, doing all the things you're doing. Clearly, I've forgotten how to drive. But 20 years in America will do that to you. But when you're DJing, and Moisen's a DJ too, so please step in here with me as well. You're going to have one headphone off, and you're basically listening to the mix that's happening outside, and then you're listening to the mix that's happening, that you're queuing up, the record you're queuing up, and basically you're balancing that record in with the other one. Wouldn't you say so, Moise?
Yeah, so for me, like, I'm actually a DJ who uses headphones on and I keep them on. There's not very often.
Do you?
Yeah, I just use the mixer to listen to the live performance, and then I also I turn it so that I can hear in one ear the live performance and in the other ear the thing that's been queued. And then I time it. When I know it's in time, I flick it back to performance, and then I really get in the zone and enjoy it.
That's really strange. Okay, that's just your way to see. There's no correct way of doing it. I don't. I have one headphone on, one headphone off, and then basically I'm listening to this one and I'm queuing it and getting ready, and I set the cue point and I do all that stuff, and then yeah, that's it. The effects are not part of that process. The effects are something you add to the general whole mix of the track, I would say. Yeah. Let's have a look here. Time check, Moisen, please. 22 minutes past, yeah.
Yes.
My time flies when you're having fun. Okay. Do we usually use earplugs?
Yes.
No, and that's why I'm deaf and I can't master my own records. I have the TV so loud now that sometimes the neighbours will bang on the wall and go, bap, bap, bap. And they'll do it in Morse code because we have quite a laugh because I'll be watching a horror movie and it just sounds like someone's getting murdered in my house.
A story about that for me. So when I didn't use earplugs, I used to be like, nah, I love this. This is what it's all about, the tickling in your ears. And actually, in one of my ears, it's like the volume is kind of like that. So, yeah, and it was ringing one time afterwards. It was like Function One systems. The sound was like... it was loud and it was aggressive and I was absolutely loving it, but my ears weren't loving it. Now I've decided that actually I'm producing, it kind of hinders me, so I have to swap my headphones around sometimes. So yeah, I'm going to definitely use earplugs from now on.
I mean, you know, this is our careers, and when I was signed to Sony, I had in-ears made, and they basically take a wax imprint of your actual ear and they make custom ear plugs for you to use so that you can hear. You'll see when you see people when they're singing on stage, they've often got a wire coming out and they're something in their back. Basically, they want to hear the front of monitors, the front of house monitors, so they can hear themselves clearly, because you cannot believe how loud it is when a drummer is playing behind you. Can't hear anything else at all. So you have these in-ears in, but you know, I've always liked to hear the bass and feel it. But what I have done since I came back to England, I always have earplugs with me. I've always got them in my ears, and I only take them out when I'm about to DJ, and I make sure the monitors turn quite low because I cannot anymore do the damage to my ears. I've got enough damage. So yes, just buy the cheap ones if you can't buy anything expensive. And if you're really stuck and you walk into a situation where you're like, God, this is painful, just get some tissue and stick it in there if you're stuck, you know, because it's better to do that and dull some of the frequencies than be exposed to really dangerous sound levels. You know, that's just not good for you. And if you're thinking of becoming a producer, or you're thinking of doing something, you know, as a career, I mean, you want to have good hearing, you know. So I think it's really, really important to do that. We'll give some shouts out. I think I'm going to say hi to Tequila Dave, Blanks, Derek, Nissan, blanks, Owl Music. There's a lot of people in here that I'd love to say hi to. All the ladies, Justin Pierce, all the guys, Steve Click, Dean. Gosh, there's a lot of different people in there. Artful Smudge, hello again. Dan D. Cooper, Maria Scanella, I hope I got that right. DJ Mickey T, DJ Slip. And just want to say Lee Rowland and Owl Music, and thanks Jamie Horn, thanks for everybody, James Allen, who have been tuning in. We'll do this again next Tuesday, and we'll surprise you whatever we do. Maybe I'll open up my Kate Bush session and get into that.
That's a good idea.
Or maybe we'll, I don't know, there's so many things. Maybe you guys can tell us what you want us to do. But you know, there are a couple of things that I will put some links in here, just so you have them one more time. And let's do this and put them in. Anything you want to say, Moisen?
Yeah, a bit of a shout out to Luke. He's Scope 77. He's been sort of like supporting me from the start, and actually do a lot of DJ sets with him and the Duck D&B guys. And he actually asked a question as well. And he says, will this be a tune that you guys release?
Oh, I'll never tell. I don't know. See, who knows? I mean, so just to give you an idea of what Moisen and I are planning for the future and plotting with our I don't have a beard, you have one.
Yeah,
but I just have a little dog, not a white cat. But you know, I do private mentorship, and I've been doing this for a long time. But we are toying with the idea of opening a subscription at a very reasonable, affordable price, where Moisen and I basically teach every month, and we make a track every month, and we go through the process. And you will also get other things alongside that subscription. Of course, you'll get remix stems, you'll get Ableton videos, you'll get blogs and all this stuff. But basically, it'll be like what we're doing here, but much slower. So week 1 will be drums, you know, week 2 we'll move on to something else, and we'll build a tune every single time as we move over. It's something we're thinking about, and I think that could be quite fun to do. So if people are interested in that, we'll keep talking about it, and maybe you'll let us know, and maybe we'll build it then. But yeah, I think maybe we will release a tune if I like it and he likes it. Who knows? You know, I'm very fussy about what I release on the label. That's why I don't sign other artists. It has to be, I'm so fussy because I want to make sure I want to play it. If it's not something I'm reaching for on my box, then, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think that's quite an honourable way of doing things, because there's a lot of labels that would just take. I'm not naming any names, I don't know, but there's a lot of labels that would take tunes and they just sit there and they don't necessarily have the love that it could have. Whereas if they actually believed in the tune, they really, really, really loved it like that. I think that's a really good ethos. Also,
the amount of work that goes into running a label, you know, I run my label, I do everything myself, and I'm not going to do that if I'm not 100% in love with the track. And you know, here, in fact, I'll put this link up so you can check out some tracks. Moisen, you should put some links up as well of your stuff, because we're right near the end now of what we're doing. But there's some links there if anyone wants to check. It takes so much time to make these tracks, you know. It's so much. I think now you're starting to see how much is involved and why musicians complain so much about tracks being £1, £1.99, this on Amazon or Spotify getting the money and paying the artist so little. You know, you can have something like 500,000 views on a video and make £3.49, you know, and Spotify is even, you know, it can be even worse. So, I mean, as we did last week, we went through some fun facts. Remember, I read this and I was like, If you want to make an income of £40,000, you have to have 10 million streams a month, or 27,778 streams a day on Spotify. Okay, so that gives you some idea, and you saw how long it took. Moisen was working quickly. Trust me, it would take me a lot longer to do what he did today. So, you know, putting a tune out, you got to really believe in it, because not only are you running the label, but you're making the videos, the advertising, the marketing, the posts, all the social media, scheduling, all of that. So yeah, it's an awful lot of work. So when you're looking to put a tune out, that's the thing I think of when someone sends me a track. It might be good, but is it great though? I'm not bothered though. Is it great? Anyway,
yeah, literally with sorry. Oh, we're out of time, haven't we? Sorry.
That's all right. We can keep going. Just for a
yeah,
second.
it was just to say that I've made many tunes and gone into. I mean, this was rushed really. Not rushed, but like I was trying to sort of speed through it so we could get through some content. And I've spent so many hours and hours behind the computer making a tune fully right up to the stage of mastering. It gets mastered. It's took me a long time, and then it just gets to my ears, and I just think, nah, this ain't the one. And I've done that with many tunes.
I've done that so many times, but I've learned the hard way that that's why I don't make a tune quickly. I make a tune quickly when I'm making it, and then I walk away. I leave it alone for a week. I might work on another tune. I'll have 3 tunes or 4 tunes going simultaneously, and I just walk away, give it a week, come back, listen to it. Ah, that's got something. Oh no, that's what's wrong with it. Or it just jumps at you right away because you gave it perspective. And once you give your music perspective, I can't tell you how many tunes I've released that just weren't great because I didn't learn the art of giving something space or perspective. And as I mentioned last week, that's useful in relationships as well, folks. And we'll end it there. I think we want to say thank you so much for spending your time with us. We've really enjoyed sharing our knowledge with you. I hope it helps you and gives you some insight. Make sure to sign up to Open the Door, because we will send a trimmed down version of this to you when I've edited it, which will take me a whole day. And then, we hope you join us next week, and feel free to email me your questions when you sign up, and we will do our best to answer them. But we've loved having you, haven't we, Moisen?
Yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you for having the patience to listen to what I've got to say and Rap's got to say.
Thanks so much, guys. Love and bass, us. See you later. Bye.